What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin Cash today. Shout out to the Dragon Riders in the House of the Dragon. We are sitting at about $476 right now, looking like we want to move up. It's looking good. I love that day by day we just keep marching our way out of this, looking like we've broken out of this kind of downtrend, and just continuing to get separation and continuation out of this is key, right? Even if you don't like that, if you don't like this downtrend, you don't like that horrible line that I drew there, look at this kind of consolidation phase here and understand that we absolutely have broken out of it for the last 3 days now. We're going on our third day now. We have been separating ourselves from this area, and that's a good thing. That really is a good thing. I suspect that Bitcoin Cash could be in this kind of move where it goes all the way up right now to about like 570. We're at 470 now, so $100 move, something like that. We might have this weird kind of inverse head and shoulders look. Bartman might get a kick out of that, right? That looks kind of like a Bart pattern almost, other than the wick down here, but it looks pretty perfect. I don't know. I wouldn't think that this would be an inverse head and shoulders, right? Inverse head and shoulders patterns tend to happen at the bottoms of moves, not at like the midway consolidation point, right? Really, all the main reason, why do I keep stuttering? The main reason, the main reason that I think that we're going to go up here is not because of this potential inverse head and shoulders look, but because that's previous areas of resistance going back here. And then also if we look at our relative high to low here, relative high to low, it's actually a little bit just above our golden ratio zone. I don't know. Maybe we don't move up to 570. 575 is the 786. I would say anything between 530 to 575. You're at 475 now, so I definitely do expect that's coming soon. It might come over the weekend. It's not common that these moves happen over the weekend, but it does happen at times, so be aware of that. Above the 50 on the RSI on the daily, that looks nice. 3-day time frame, looking beautiful as well, getting back above the 50, higher lows, very bullish kind of posturing. The 3-day bounced off of its 123. The daily bounced off its 123 on the same day. That's kind of cool. Weekly time frame here, looking good, bouncing off of its 50 on the weekly moving average, looking nice. Higher low succession there as well. Beautiful, beautiful move. Look at Bitcoin Cash, man. Look at this. You can tell already, right? This cycle's different. Something's different about this cycle than any other cycle, right? First cycle, there's your readings. Second cycle, here's your readings, right? Third cycle, we're not even done. We're not even close to done, right? This cycle probably ends somewhere over here or further out, right? And just if you look at the divide, you look at how close together these gaps are, or these readings are compared to these ones here, right? If it's not obvious, let me help you. From a peak there to a peak there, that was 35 bars. From that same peak there to the next peak here, that was 49 bars, 48 bars, whatever. From that peak there to that peak there, 35 bars, okay, about the same distance. But then you had another peak, double top right there, right? This double top wasn't in the overbought zone, that one was, whatever. More consistent readings in the overbought zone, that's all I'm trying to get at, right? So then from that peak to that peak, right, because I'm measuring from like nearest peak to nearest peak that are in the overbought zone. That's another 35 bars. So 35, 35, 35, 49. And it's looking like we're going to bounce off this weekly RSI and get into the overbought zone again, right? We're going to have more readings in the overbought zone at more consistent paces than we did last cycle. Not only that, and if that doesn't explain enough that this cycle's different or might be a little bit stronger than last cycle, we saw the highest readings in the RSI that we've ever seen, right? More consistent readings too this cycle, above the 80s, right? Stronger readings overall this cycle too. Very constructive kind of price action. Very like this kind of stuff, guys, where you move up, where you're consolidating in an area, you break out, you pull back, and you find support at the top end of that previous area of consolidation, and then you do it again, you're just stair-stepping all the way up like that. That's very, very bullish stuff, right? That's the foundations of some very powerful stuff at play. And not only that, speaking of the foundations of powerful stuff at play, you already know, right? Very large consolidation pattern, higher lows, lower highs. We're at the precipice, we're at the brink of breaking out of this right now. When we do break out of this, I assume that it's going to cause a very eruptive move. We're at 475 now. Target hasn't changed. 1,300, 1,700, something like that by the end of January is the expectation. And I think that we could go higher going into February. Going into the end of February, going into the beginning of March, I think that we really could go higher. But the minimum target right now would be something around 1,300, if not potentially around $1,700, $1,900. I suspect that we will be there by the end of this move, by the end of January, if not sometime in the very beginnings of February, but by the end of this move here, which, you know, let's just see. Looking at this back here. That took 3 weeks. This took right here, 1. That took 8 weeks. If we're in the midst of this next move right now on this week, if it took 8 weeks, that would be, that would be the end of February, actually. So maybe it takes until the end of February. I don't know, man. But by the end of this move, which I would be surprised if it took that long for Bitcoin Cash to get up that high. Maybe by the end of January, we're at this area. And then by the end of February, we're up at this area. Who knows? Something like that. But time will tell, I suppose. But I don't really have anything else that I want to say, man. I think on a weekly perspective, the RSI looks pretty good. 3-day RSI looks really good as well. The daily time frame looks nice, getting above the 50 here. Looking like you're turning the tide a little bit, breaking this downtrend, finding support on the 123, finding support on the 3-day 123. It just all looks good, man. Set to do the right thing. I have a real suspicion, you guys. I want to end the video with this, I suppose. Bullish 3-day engulfing candle. A real suspicion that Bitcoin Cash is about to steal the spotlight, man. I really do think it's about to steal the show. And I don't really know if there's anything to facilitate that other than the obvious in the charts, right? Other than the fact that you have a monthly bullish cross on your ribbons, other than the fact that you're about to break a lifelong consolidation phase, other than the fact that for the first time in your history, you're actually finding higher lows and looking now potentially to form your first uptrend with higher highs as well. You don't have higher highs. I mean, like technically, no, it's like a double top. That might even be a slightly lower high. But you do have higher lows, right? Or at least relatively speaking. Or relatively speaking, I suppose, lower lows, but on a macro basis, higher lows still. But nevertheless, you can't deny that this right now, what you're doing here, what you've been doing since 2022, looks different than what you've done your whole life versus Bitcoin, right? So I don't know, man. I got this big feeling. I got a feeling that Bitcoin Cash is gonna kill it. Let's see, hold on, real quick. If we just do another one of these moves here, one of those cray moves, right? You move up 117% versus Bitcoin. BTC, I think, is going to move up by the end of January. Genuinely by the end of January, I think BTC, like with a very strong rate of conviction, I'd say is at 132K, right? So 35%. BCH BTC 117%. So let's just say that's about 150%. Is that right? 140, 150. It's a little bit over 150, right? A little bit over 150, but that's okay. So 150%, if that's the case, then Bitcoin Cash might move up 150% from here by the end of January, which would only put it at about 1,200. So maybe my $1,300 target needs some revision. Maybe it's not 1,300. Maybe it's closer to 1,200. But that makes a lot of sense to me. So I would suspect by the end of January, you're up here at this area, right? Something like that. And I suspect Bitcoin is like to a T, literally, quite literally right here. And you add those percentages up, it'd be about there. And let's just see, high to low. I mean, it's not really a conventional place, I suppose. Right? Especially not for what we've seen. I don't know, man. Because if you were to go here, 173%, maybe you just go a little bit higher. Maybe you do get your higher highs. I don't know. What if you broke through this? I mean, if you broke through this and then you saw some kind of extended move there to your 1272, did 170, you saw a 200 and something % move. I mean, yeah, that's possible. I suppose either are possible. I don't know. This last part of the video, if it's made me think anything, it's that maybe, and we've always, I guess the consideration is always there. It should always be implied that lower targets than what I predict could happen, right? I'm not God. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a prophet. I don't know what's going to happen. So whatever I say, obviously lower prices can happen, but maybe instead of saying 13 to 1700 or 13 to 1900, maybe we should say 1100 to 1700. Probably even closer. I think I like 1500. I think 1500 to 1100 by the end of January. I think that's a more appropriate range. Still above 1,000, still up in that same area, similar targets, but a little bit lower, right? And that just makes sense, man. With the fibs here, with the comparison versus BTC, with the expectation and the growth of Bitcoin itself, unless I'm wrong, and I could be wrong, there's a few metrics that we're measuring on that I could definitely be wrong as far as like what your overall growth could be. Again, I'm not saying you'll be at 1,500 by the end of January, but I think something between this 1414 and this 1618 is the most possible. And then likely you probably don't hit that 1886 by the end of January. But going into February, you absolutely could. I suspect that this thing, by the end of January, you're up here versus Bitcoin. But then going into February, we start to break out. And I think that breakout of this overall consolidation here, I think that's going to lead to some phenomenal growth, right? We're really going to see Bitcoin Cash take off at that point. I mean, let's just assume, just for fun, just for right now, what this would imply, okay? 500% growth. I would assume by this time, okay, if I'm talking about when Bitcoin Cash is here, that Bitcoin itself is at 132K. I would assume then if Bitcoin Cash is here versus Bitcoin, BTC is probably at a higher price there. So if that's at 132K, let's just say, I don't know, let's say it's at 150K. The lower the number, the more conservative this way of thinking is going to be, right? The higher the number, the more moon boyish that we get. So let's stay away from the moon boyish stuff, though. I got to be fair. I think 150 is very, very conservative of a number just for this kind of thought experimentation here. Okay, so 491% plus 53. So if Bitcoin were to go, by the time Bitcoin Cash is here, and I think it's inevitable. I think that we will in February, March break out of this range, that doesn't mean that we have to be up here by the end of February, March, but maybe that's April, May, maybe that's June, July, but in time we will be up there. In time we will, and likely Bitcoin will be at higher prices, likely higher than 150K. But if it was at 150K, that would imply then that 53% plus 490%, that's 543. Let's just say 545, round up a little bit. Bitcoin Cash should be at 3,000, right? And this, by the way, you guys, this is if by the time Bitcoin Cash is at this level versus BTC, that BTC is only at 150K, right? That I'm going to take away the fibs here, right? This is I think this is kind of interesting. Hold up now, right? This roll with this line of thinking. If you're still here, you're paying attention, you're bored, right? Whatever, just hear me out here. Let's philosophize for a second, right? If Bitcoin Cash, I want to just ask you genuinely and ask myself genuinely, looking at this chart, if it breaks above these highs here, which I think it will, do you think it could return to this high point here, these previous areas of resistance here and support here, right? Could it return to that high point? I think it could. Bitcoin itself right now is at about 98K, about 100K. I don't know how high it's going to be by the time Bitcoin Cash is up here versus Bitcoin, right? We don't even know if it's going to break out of this. I think it will, but it hasn't yet. But if it does, I think it stands a solid chance to go back up to this area, right? If it does, likely Bitcoin itself will not just be at these prices, but it'll be at dramatically higher prices. I think it'll probably be even above 200K by that time, right? And by the way, I'm not expecting that this is the end of the cycle for Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin. I think it'll be higher potentially, but around here nonetheless, right? If Bitcoin goes to, let's say, 500K, like I expect it to, I expect by the end of the cycle, Bitcoin will be worth 500K. If Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, or Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin is worth almost 3% of a Bitcoin at 500K, what is that? That'd be about 15K. Be about 13K, actually. 13K right there. And that's the minimum target that we have, right? Absolute minimum, high to low, 13K, 1272 from the current price. I mean, that minimum target from the current price is a 27x. It's not too bad. I don't know. Just thinking out loud here, guys. Thinking out loud, that's all. And that's only if, Bitcoin Cash gets to here. And we can't officially think about that till we break out of this range, right? Then we look for next resistance points here, very obvious areas. And obviously I do think we go higher. And then not only is it dependent on that, but it's dependent on does Bitcoin itself get all the way up to 500K. It's dependent on a couple of things. But if those happen, and those are targets, what's great about that, what I'm tripping a little bit on is the fact that those are targets that I've been talking about for Bitcoin for over 2 years now. I've been talking about these same targets for Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin for over 2 years now. We've been talking about the same targets for Bitcoin Cash itself versus the US dollar for over 2 years now. And then doing all those comparisons in themselves and just adding them and putting them together on the USD chart to see what that would project the price out to be. And it all comes up to the bottom of the range that we're expecting, but still in that range. It's very reassuring, right? And I definitely, this isn't my expectation for the highs, right? I think that you could go higher, and if you do, you'd have to go higher by this metric. If you're here at this level when Bitcoin's at 500K, and I think Bitcoin will achieve a 500K price, then there's no way that you're going to get really above this price here. If you want to get above this price, you want to see a 20K price like I'm expecting, you need this thing to see higher growth, right? And there's reasonable suspicion that we could, right? We absolutely could. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end the video on that note. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I enjoyed this one. I feel like it was off to a little bit of a boring start, but it was kind of fun at the end. I don't know. We were exploring. We're like explorers on the charts here. I don't know. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.